The Screen Actors Guild has gone on strike, and that has caused delays and interruptions to the production schedules of some comic book related media. This is only Act 1. Let's take a look on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, comic book community. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. Before we get started, like, comment, subscribe, do all that great stuff. Follow us on the other social medias, Bronzeville_comics on Instagram and on Whatnot. I do Whatnot sales every Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. If you use the link in the description of this video, you can sign up and can get $10 off your first purchase. Also, in the description of this video is a link to my email and my eBay store. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about the writers' strike and how that impacts comic book related media. A couple weeks ago, the Screen Writers Guild went on strike. And they previously had a strike in 2007, 2008. And basically what that means is the major studios that produce movies and television show, and most of the TV shows from streaming and movies from streaming outlets and networks, including the late night talk shows like Saturday Night Live, shut down immediately. The writers are not going to write anymore. Some productions are moving forward if the script is already finished, but there have been delays. So there are, like, for instance, the Daredevil Born Again TV series scheduled for Disney Plus has had production delays. Blade, which doesn't have a finished script, the production start has been delayed. Other properties are already filming or already completed filming. And one of the things that I've heard is that Deadpool, and I'm not sure about this because I am not an entertainment lawyer, since Ryan Reynolds is also a member of the Writers Guild, he finished the script along with whoever he's collaborating with. But Ryan Reynolds, the first two Deadpool films, is famous for ad-libbing his lines. As long as they are filming during the writer's strike, that would be screenwriting he would do. He cannot ad-lib any lines. Now, I don't know if that doesn't mean that, like, let's say Hugh Jackman could ad-lib a line to make a dig at Deadpool, and then Deadpool couldn't respond because it's not in the script. I don't know if that's the case or not. But delays. Evidently, James Gunn has finished the Superman Legacy script, and he won't be writing anymore. He can still continue with it because he's also the director. I don't know if rewrites can be done. Now, most movies have a screenwriter on set, and there are usually constant rewrites. Something doesn't work, they can make an adjustment. Here they can't. They have to go what's on the printed page. So it does kind of hamstring current productions, and it is delaying other productions. Now, why is there a strike? There are essentially two reasons. One is monetary, and that it comes upon every once in a while. If you look historically at films and then television, new media is essentially been unanticipated. When television started, nobody writing movies in the 20s and 30s thought that TV would be that big a deal. Come the 1950s, it was. Then late 70s, early 80s, VHS became another situation. Then DVDs, then Blu-ray, and now streaming. And streaming is a big one. So somebody who writes, let's say, a television series historically would get compensated for writing the episode, and also in their collective bargaining agreement between the Screenwriters Guild and the producers, they would get residuals whenever the show was rerun. Same is true of actors and directors. Some actors get residuals throughout the rest of their lives and are able to actually live off that. If you're a cast member of Star Trek, that show was in syndication for years, so they were constantly getting residual checks. But now, with streaming, that was never written into the contracts back in the day. in the prior contract. So now they have to make the adjustment. And the other big difference with streaming is most of the streaming companies do not release their viewership figures. We don't know what the highest watched shows on Netflix are. Unlike a network television series or even cable television, since the 1950s, the AC Nielsen Company has been doing television ratings, both nationally and locally. So whether a show was in first run on network television, we knew approximately how many people viewed it each week, and there was a standard that was gone to with that. Also with local numbers, the Nielsen provided that. So a 4:30 rerun of the Brady Bunch on a syndicated show in 1984, they knew how many people approximately watched that. The Nielsen had a rating for that, so there was able to be monetization in terms of residuals for the original participants in the program, writers, directors, actors. Now, again, I'm not an expert, so if you have more correct, detailed, informed information, please put it in the comments below. I'm trying to give a quick overview. So now we have streaming. We have no idea how many times a movie or a television show is streamed. And so, anecdotally, part of the stories we've heard from members of the Writers Guild is that they were getting residuals for a show that aired on network and then went to syndication. And it was kind of anticipated, and it was usually, they knew what they were going to get. It wasn't a surprise if it was particularly low. But as long as the show was still in first run and then reruns, on the network when new episodes weren't being aired. Streaming, they don't know. They're talking about very low residuals they get for shows that are on streaming. The other difference is, let's take a look at the difference between two shows. Let's say The Flash, which has been on the CW for years, and The Last of Us, right? Which is on HBO Max. You can look at the ratings. You just go to the Wikipedia page for The Flash, and you can look at the ratings for every episode, every year, every season, and there is a pretty good amount of data there as to how many people watch the show. For a streaming service, not so much. The other difference is, if you're a writer on The Flash, there are about 20 episodes a season, and that historically has been the number of episodes per season of network television shows. It usually was closer to 30 episodes, maybe 30 for a half-hour program, and maybe in the mid-20s for a one-hour program. I'm talking about like in the 1960s. That's dwindled over time, but usually it's still at least 20 episodes for a full season. Streaming shows are 6, maybe 8, 10, maybe 12 episodes. We're all kind of shocked that Daredevil Born Again is going to be 18 episodes. So those are fewer paychecks for everyone involved. And again, what I think the Screenwriters Guild want is more transparency in who is viewing this and a better monetization. Now, on the other hand, we all know that the streaming services are all competing against each other furiously. There are just too many of them, and most consumers cannot subscribe to all of them. I talked about this in a previous video. Yeah, in the early parts of 2020, when we were all shut down with the pandemic and very few dollars for people who still had income were going to other forms of entertainment. People weren't going on vacation. They weren't going, hotels, theme parks, cruises. They weren't going out to the movies. They weren't going out to dinner. They were streaming whatever was available, and a lot of the services were jumping on points right at that time. Well, now they're finding it increasingly difficult to much less increase the number of viewers, but retain the viewers that they have. So from a corporate point of view, they want to see more and more profit. They're not getting it. At best, they're holding even, and maybe they'll raise rates. That's kind of the easiest thing to do from a corporate mentality is say, okay, we have, $50 million, 50 million people paying for our subscription. Let's raise it by $1 for everybody. But we all know that people are tightening the belt. Things cost more. There is inflation. If your income isn't keeping up with at least inflation, you probably have to tighten your belt a little bit. And one of the first things to go is your entertainment dollar. So the studios, the streaming companies, whether it be Disney or Warner Brothers or Paramount, Universal, Amazon, they don't want to spend more money to get the content on their service. They don't want to spend more for the writers, directors, and actors. That doesn't increase their profits. So the screenwriters are saying, we want our share of the profits. That's the big issue number one. Now, before I get to issue number two, obviously, whenever there's collective bargaining, the compensation is always the major part of it. But there is another part. And before we get to that, I said in the preview that this is just Act 1. The Directors Guild, the DGA, and the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, which also several years ago combined with the theater actors to form one union. Their contracts expire June 30th, just over a month from now. I believe the Directors Guild is set to enter into negotiations very soon. SAG-AFTRA soon after that. Don't be surprised if those two unions join the writers in going on strike because the issues are similar. The amount of money they're getting from streaming and the other issue, which is an interesting, complex issue, which is the use of artificial intelligence. What all three bodies want to make sure is that in the future, all three organizations want to make sure that the members of their organization are the ones that are creating the product that people are watching on their televisions and going to the movies to see. Recently, I read an article where Joe Russo, co-director of, Winter Soldier and Endgame and Infinity War, along with his brother, was saying in 10 years he predicted that AI would completely change the face of Hollywood. Now, AI is very much in its infancy now. You can look at some rather awkward AI-generated commercials on YouTube. You can see the abomination that is ChatGPT on Comic Book Canon here on YouTube. But it's in its infancy. And you look at those and, you might look at what the drawings of a 4-year-old Todd McFarlane looked like. Pretty sure they didn't look as good as his published artwork. AI learns quickly. So what Russo was saying is you may, in 10 years, be able to tell AI what you want to watch on your TV. And I think the example he used, that you could put your own avatar in the movie, put yourself in, say, I want to watch a 90-minute romantic comedy starring Marilyn Monroe and me. And, we can all imagine stuff. Listen, nerd culture, there's a segment that loves their fan fiction. Fan fiction in terms of writing is one thing. It's not monetized. It doesn't take away from what we have. Fan fiction digitally in terms of watching a movie. And if you look at some AI-generated photographs of people, some of them are pretty convincing. So you can imagine as we hurtle into the future, would AI have the ability to create a full-length feature film? I would think very likely. So now and there are members of the Actors Guild who, the ones that garner the most attention because people know who they are from their screen presence. Kind of know maybe who some of the writers are, but usually because they're also directors or actors. I've said, they don't want to have their image scanned and be able to be used by anybody for any purpose in the future. I mean, I don't think anyone would, because, you're having a character that looks like you do something on screen that you didn't consent to, that you didn't produce. And so evidently there's already use of AI in writing scripts. Some folks can use it for research, right? Like, how would a particular character act in a particular setting? So, writers in the past, if they were exploring something that they were not familiar with, like, how would an FBI agent approach this situation? What would the reality of it be without being an FBI agent? Writing about it somewhat convincingly for an audience could maybe do something in terms of AI. What the writers also don't want is they don't want that their original product to be used to help inform artificial intelligence to produce, let's say, scripts in the future. Same is true of actors. The actors want to maintain their jobs. They want there to be acting jobs in the future. Already there are some people are trying to get into acting that are using this opportunity to have themselves scanned and be used maybe as part of AI-created material. It's slippery slope. And that's something that the unions are trying to fight against. Now, think about the monetization, right? When you get to a certain point, what would it cost the studio, right? Whoever is producing the AI, to whether it's personalized, something that you decided to come up with, or something that a couple of people decided to produce using AI in the future. If you're old enough to remember, there's a series of commercials that used the likenesses using CGI of like John Wayne and Fred Astaire and deceased actors. And that was a point of contention because they had never agreed for their likenesses to be used to endorse that product or in that manner. But there were no safeguards in place in the contracts that they signed at the time to protect that. So we have things that are kind of used in the fan fiction realm. People produce their own, fan movies of Star Wars content or superhero content, for instance. People do those deep fake videos, like like Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland in the trailer of Back to the Future, something like that. And that's mildly entertaining, and you can see the seams in it, but soon you may not be able to. It may be very convincing as the technology increases. So if you don't have to create a movie from the ground up, if you can have a computer, artificial intelligence do all of it for you, not only don't you need the writers, the directors, and the actors, you don't need everyone else involved in that production. Cinematographers, editors, stunt people, costumers, key grips, the craft service people. If you look at the end, even of an animated film, which involves a lot of people creating the animation, if you look at the end credits, you sit through the end credits of like a Marvel movie to wait for that end credit scene, it takes a long time as they list hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are employed to produce that movie. What happens to all of those jobs, right? Now, obviously, each union is mostly concerned with their members. So right now, what the screenwriters are fighting for is they want to make sure that their original efforts are protected, and that in the future, it will still be human beings through their own human creativity producing content. I mean, you think stuff is derivative and cliche now. Wait till AI gets a hold of it. Same, I'm sure, will be true of the directors and the actors. So we are, about 5 weeks away from the ends of those contracts? And more than likely, if a strike is called, it will happen before then. So sometime in the month of June, I think this is going to get ramped up. And it's a complicated issue because nobody knows exactly what the future is going to look like in terms of artificial intelligence. So, as a fan, right, would it be fun to say, okay, I want to see, a DC Marvel team-up movie, with Robert Downey Jr., Christopher Evans, Christopher Reeves, Adam West, Linda Carter, however you wanted to cast it. And since there's digital moving images of all those folks playing those characters, could eventually AI be able to put something together, or Lou Ferrigno's the Hulk, whatever you wanted to do. And you can say, yeah, you know what, let's have, Mark Ruffalo be the Hulk, or let's have Edward Norton be the Hulk, and just change it. iteration after iteration, and it would take probably a relatively short time for AI to produce that. So those are the issues that are being faced. One of the other things is evidently in terms of the writers, and this is unique to them, some of the writers are transitioning their ideas to the potential of going to comic books. They're pitching the ideas that they would have pitched for television series and movies to comic book companies, and looking in that avenue. Something, and I was reading one article, and I forget who it was, but they were saying they had written original programming for a streaming service for television series, but they actually transitioned to comics and make more money from comic books than they did from television, from streaming. So, how is that going to affect us as the consumer? Now, in the short term, we're looking at potential delays to all of these properties. And listen, all of the studios, and I'm talking specifically about Marvel, let's say Marvel, Disney with Marvel and Star Wars, and DC with the superhero stuff, they have, whether they've released it all or not, I'm sure, Kevin Feige and James Gunn in their offices have a huge board with all of the projects they're looking at and all of the release dates they're looking at, because they want to make sure that there's consistency of content, that and there's that trade-off between, how much is too much, oversaturation, but also every time they put a movie out, they're going to make money. So those are going to be delayed. Will the delays... Now, also then, as you delays, if you were planning to shoot this film in this period of time and you had these actors lined up, now that affects the other projects that they had signed up for. And so the contracts, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. But don't be surprised if the directors and the actors follow suit with the screenwriters. Traditionally, it's the writers that come first, and then the directors, and then the actors. I think this is going to be a battle because there's the short-term monetary part, which I probably, from the studio's point of view, is a little more important, because they're looking at making sure that the shareholders are happy next quarter. But there's also that long-term thing. And I think what all three bodies want put in place is some guarantees that the content that's put on streaming services and put into theaters remains created by humans. And maybe AI will have a place in it, but largely the creation of human beings and maintaining the integrity of that creative process. That's not to say that there won't be some other body that will do it offline. Will have their own thing where you can produce your own content, much like deepfake videos right now. As a fan, would I like to be able to say, I want to see this in a movie? I want to see, I want to see season 4 of Stargirl. Let's continue from where they were at the end of season 3. I would love to see that, and maybe with AI, I could order that up. So yeah, there is a benefit there, but I think there's also, this idea of, I think a lot of folks in a lot of different jobs are, thinking, how is AI going to change my profession? Limit it, make it easier, make it obsolete. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully this video will be dated rather soon, and the parties involved can make agreements, but I'm thinking that we're going to see a little bit more labor strife in the entertainment industry going forward. Listen, this is not a crucial part of our culture. It's not like, sanitation workers, nurses, air traffic controllers, police officers, teachers going out on strike. But from our little segment of what we're interested in, yes, it affects us. We want to see this content. I want to see a Blade movie with Mahershala Ali. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. I can't wait for the DC stuff to begin. I'm really looking forward to that. And I won't even talk about the effect it's going to have on the values of comics. Will it like build anticipation as we look to like comic books when we don't have, this is what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, we don't have like stuff to watch? Or will it hurt the values of those books? Let me know, again, what you think in the comments below. And if you have any more specific information in terms of, you know, you're an expert in entertainment law, let me know. I'm just a guy who read a couple articles and, you know, knows about comic books. So leave that in the comments below. In the meantime, you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.